I always enjoyed games like Fire Emblem, Super Robot Wars, and my favorite strategy game I would say is XCOM. I think a decent question would be, how does Metal Slug Tactics compare to those games? And I would say it's great. Like, I enjoyed this game way more than I should, and I enjoyed it more than some of the games that I mentioned. I'm recording this video 2 months after the game has been released, and unfortunately, the game didn't get as much traction as other titles in the genre. But I really believe that it does deserve more attention because it's genuinely a good, decent game. Not only that, but it was able to break new grounds with its roguelike mechanics. So here's the thing. Tactics is a spin-off of the original franchise Metal Slug. And if you remember, Metal Slug was just a hit and run game. Honestly, it's one of the most iconic hit and run games you can think of off the top of your head. Now, I didn't play Metal Slug on arcades, but I did get to enjoy the ports that they have. I think one was on the Nintendo DS, on PC several times. So yeah, I did play the game. Like, I'm not a stranger to Metal Slug. However, I have to note this. I have no love or hate for this franchise. Like, I loosely know the characters, played it several times, but it's not something big or something that I'm hung up on. Now, just before I go into the gameplay details, I really think that if you want like a difficulty spectrum, I would say this game is easier than XCOM, but it's more difficult than Fire Emblem. Also, this game broke new grounds in terms that there is no strategy roguelike game, I think, ever. Uh, Off the top of my head, I don't know any other game that's like this one. I think people can also just call this game roguelike and not a strategy game because of the heavy roguelike element inside of it. So the roguelike element is something like Hades. I mean, Hades is a very popular game, and that game basically works on runs. So every time you escape hell, basically, and that's a run, and then you go back, that's your second run, third run, and you just keep reattempting your escape, and that's how the game is built around that mechanic of you dying and coming back. And every time you have like new powers and new abilities to help you get further and further. And over here, you have the same aspect, as in, like, every time you play, you get like different enemies, you get different map setups, you get different missions, different routes you can take. And that's like the roguelike element that was mixed in with the strategy element inside. So before this game, the last strategy game that I have played would be Midnight Suns, Marvel's Midnight Suns, and that game was made by the same guys who created XCOM. Now, it's important to note that that game was not received well. I mean, the game is fun, but it had a lot of problems outside of its strategy mechanics, outside its missions, right? The overworld. Surprisingly, this game, Tactics, doesn't have any of those issues. Like, the overworld and the things you do outside of the missions are really clean and streamlined, unlike Midnight Suns. So I do want to mention that. It is very important. Both games have decent strategy elements within the mission, but outside of the mission, Midnight Suns was terrible in my opinion. Like, you had to do a lot of legwork, a lot of exploring, things that people who play strategy games are just not attracted to. But on the other hand, here in Metal Slug, you have none of these things. And to me, like, that's a breath of fresh air. Like, I don't want to do extra work, especially when that work is not important or not in the same genre of what I'm playing, which is basically strategy games. So this game runs like any other tactical based strategy game. However, there are some additions and some adjustments that I did like, and I feel like they took a direction that other game developers just choose not to do. one of which is an undo button. So undo as a function exists in other games, but it doesn't exist like this. So here, the undo button is valid for all movement. Okay, so it doesn't matter. Your characters will move for free until any one of them makes an action. So actions could be special actions, which are like your side abilities, or actions such as firing your weapon. So any one of those would be considered an action, and that will consume the undo button until your character can move again. And you can move all characters, like all three characters can move. So you can decide like what is the most optimal movement pattern that you can get the most damage out of. I played a lot of strategy games, and I'm pretty sure that all of those games do have an undo. Basically, you move one character and then press like circle or something, they come back. But not like this. This is the most advanced undo button you will ever see. Another point is the maps. So the way that this game is built is roguelike. That means you have different sections of your journey, and the sections could be the maps. So you have one in Egypt, another one in the city, and another one in the jungle. Like it's nice, and each one of those sections has like their own set of enemies, and they all behave differently. And after some time, you will get used to like what kind of damage they can do and what type of damage patterns they can do, like squares, right? You will understand that different enemies need different solutions, and they also give different opportunities because some enemies kill each other. So this game also has one-time items. The closest thing would be in Fire Emblem. You had potions and stuff you can use. You have a similar thing going on here, but here you have like an airstrike or summoning a metal slug, or popping an item makes everyone move again. Popping another item makes everyone attack again. And I gotta say, like the first, second, and third playthrough, I don't think I ever used one. But as the game gets harder, like you're gonna keep increasing the difficulty to get more rewards. So when you do that, you will be forced to use them because bosses do get really difficult. So Metal Slug is owned by SNK, and also SNK owns King of Fighters. And this is important because this game has 8 characters, 3 of which are from King of Fighters. So if you didn't know, Leona, Ralph, and Clark are coming from a different game. They're basically crossover characters, but they blend in so well, you would never be able to tell. Like if I told you that these characters are from this franchise, you'd be like, yeah, that makes sense, 100%. And me personally, like I love fighting games, and I did play KOF for a bit, and I really do like Leona. So I had to unlock all 3 of them. Like it was not possible for me to let go. I just had to play as them. Also, like it is fun because you get to try them out in different team scenarios. You have 8 characters in this game and you can choose 3 every time. I think that's really, really generous. Each character has at least 4 loadouts and like a dozen abilities. So you can keep like replaying, and every run will be different. I beat the game, I think 9 times, 9 or 10, I'm not sure. But not even once, never did I play with the same team. Every time I play with a different team. Another thing I appreciate is the game has a save and quit functionality. Basically, if you played older games, this would be called suspend. So you can suspend the game, quit, and then come back, you can continue. So that's very, very useful. And no, this is not like a save and try mechanic because that would be really cheap. I guess now I'm done with all the praise. Now I'm gonna like say a few things that annoyed me in the game because this game is not perfect and I don't think anyone would expect it to be. This is the first time like SNK is rolling out with a game like this. So yeah, 100% it will have like some flaws. So let's discuss them. One thing is this game is trying out a new genre. It's like blending in 2 genres, which is the roguelike and the turn-based strategy. So the game just takes too long. And I I'm being very generous, right? So you play, if you want to do the entire map, you have to do four sections. So four different sections of the map. That's within one run, okay? And on each section, you have to play 3 rounds, which means 3 different missions, and then face the boss and then move on to the next section. Now, each mission can take up to 30 to 40 minutes. Now, this is just my experience. Sometimes it does take less, but that's because the stars are just aligning and you can do everything because of the enemy placements, right? It's sometimes it's kind of random. Those enemies, like, they don't spawn correctly sometimes, meaning that they're just not optimal for your strategy or the characters that you have. So that means you're just going to take a little longer to defeat them. And this might be okay on like the lower difficulties because I remember not having a problem with the length of missions when I was playing on lower difficulties, but as it gets more and more difficult, you can't take hits. You can't take hits from enemies. It's very dangerous. Like 2 or 4 hits, like 2 to 4, you are dead. One of your characters is going to die. And on higher difficulties, you don't get respawns. So this game allows you to respawn characters in after they are downed. But on higher difficulties, they take that away from you. So you only start out, I think, with 2 respawns or 1 respawn, unlike 5 on lower difficulties. So it does become cutthroat, but it's not difficult because you can take your time. Like I said, you have the undo button. You can utilize that to make sure that you get your optimal setting in. Doing so for each mission, not only to get the main objective, but also the secondary objective, which helps out a lot, you will be facing 30 minutes of playtime on a single mission. Like I said, and also this brings back the save and quit button, which is the suspend. Like they put it in there because they know you will take time. Just for comparison, other roguelikes, like in 2 hours, or even less sometimes, depending on your build, you will finish the run. You will finish that run and you will be now moving on to your next run, right? So this game is long. It takes a long time. Now, I don't want to describe this as stupid, but the game does have an elevation thing going on. So you can have enemies, or you yourself, your characters are on different elevations. So they have to move up and down on stage, right? That's fine. But what's not fine is that sometimes you can throw weapons. So some characters have throwables. Okay, not all characters shoot like guns. Some of them throw Molotovs or bombs. And this is where it comes in. This is the advantage of having weapons like this because they can take down enemies on different elevations. But here's the problem. Sometimes that visual is very deceptive. So you will be playing as Aerie 100% and you will use her bombs in this manner. Now here's the thing. You have to be in the same path, but because the visuals are deceptive, sometimes you think you're on the same line as the enemy, but in reality, you're not. They're like to the right or to the left. It's really bizarre when you experience it like the second or third time. You're like, this does not make sense. I mean, hey, you have an undo button, and that's how I started using the undo button. I always let Aerie move last because it depends where she's facing. So if she's facing the wrong direction or the wrong path, she's not going to hit the enemy. Okay, so the next thing is a game design element, which they brought in from the roguelike genre. So by the end of each mission, you get money. And this is not the same as coins. Coins are used for like inside the mission, and money is used outside the mission. So for your overall progress, let's say. So money will let you buy things like mods, loadouts, single-use items, and abilities. Now that's cool, right? Because you build, like, you're not starting from zero every time, right? Because you are basically stronger as you progress through the game. Except, no, none of these things are guaranteed to drop in the game. So just as an example, in Hades, you have like power-ups that you can spend, I think it was keys, if I'm not mistaken. You can spend like currency to give yourself more lives, more dashes. Here, you get more weapon mods and you get more abilities, but again, they're not guaranteed. There's an RNG element to this game, and the rewards you get for completing each section or completing each mission are completely random. There's no guarantee you will get whatever you spent money on, especially golden tier mods. So weapon mods are great because they give your primary weapon or secondary weapon a lot of use. But in order to get those golden weapon mods, like it takes time and you don't necessarily get it. You don't get the option to buy it. You might get options for other weapons, but not necessarily the one that you need. In order to get upgrades and extra mods, you need to spend coins after the mission or get them during the mission. So you have 3 missions per section, so you can choose a path that gives you weapon mods as rewards or even coins as rewards. It's okay, you can choose that. However, when it comes time to spend or even reap those rewards, there's another problem that is apparent. You have 3 characters. You have 3 characters that are fighting for the same resources, being coins and option mods. So if you choose a crate option when you're going through the routes, you can choose the crate option, which will definitely give you a weapon mod. But the problem is, the weapon mod only applies to one choice. They will give you 3 choices and you can only choose one, which means only one character is benefiting from this. And if you complete the section, you will come to like a camp where you can now upgrade your skills or buy extra mods and even sell some of your mods, okay? Which is fine, but again, the prices are very high. Usually, if you upgrade one of your skills, you won't have enough money to buy mods. And even if you do, you can't buy the premium mods because there are different levels to the mods, and usually you want the ones which are golden in color being the best mods you can get. And that is not possible because most of the time you want to get the upgrade, the skill upgrade. So you will spend all your money to get the skill upgrade. And I remember in some playthroughs, I had to sell mods to buy the upgrades. They're just more valuable. Sometimes you want to buy multiple upgrades, but again, you can't do that because the game only lets you choose one. Bringing back this idea that your 3 characters are fighting for the same resources, meaning you can't have more options. Usually, different roguelike games don't face this problem, and that's simply because you have one character, and whatever you buy or upgrade, you get the most out of it because you're using only one character. But in our case, we're using 3. So you have 3 characters that you want to like increase their chances of success using their own strategies that complement each other. And that is difficult because not all members can be as powerful as other members, meaning you will always have like one clutch member. Throughout my playthroughs, I had different strategies, and usually like I had to resort to doing that, focusing on the improvement on one character, just because it increased the odds of my success. And honestly, it is not fun to do that because the characters have really good, decent abilities that you want to use in the map. And those abilities are really fun to use, especially when you can sync off of them. Okay, now let me get into some of the strategy that I use to beat the game like 10 times. So the way that I worked it out is that you need to get more XP to unlock more special actions. And you also need to get mods for your weapons to do more damage and sometimes get extra effects. So the optimal route would be to get crates and XP. So basically every time you drop into a section of the map, that's what you do. You get a crate that hopefully gives you XP, and then you try to get another thing similar to that where it gives you XP and something else, or sometimes you get a crate with a single use item. So those are the perfect routes, I would say. So the way that it works is that you have to do 1, 2, 3, and then you get the boss of the section. So you get to play 3 rounds before the boss drops. So the way you would do it is you will plan out a route that gives you XP and crates and then ends with an ammo. And the reason you want that path is because when you end on ammo, that means you're fully stocked for the boss fight and you can go all out. One of the things that you will learn the hard way is to do whatever possible to just get through the round. You have to complete the round and you have to use whatever resources you have to complete the round. If you fail the mission, you'll have to restart from the beginning. Sometimes you forget that because you're playing a strategy game, but yeah, that is 100% true. Every time you lose, you start from the beginning and you have to do each section again. I do find that this is repetitive, like this loop. I do this loop on every section, on every single playthrough. I do find it repetitive, but for some reason it is not boring. And it's not boring because each mission is different. Each mission, like the rewards that I want are the same, but the mission contents are different, and that's what sets it apart. That's what makes the game fun, is because every time you have to deal with a new problem. Now, when it comes to the boss fights, I feel like they're the highlight of each section, and as it should be, right? The bosses, when you meet them the first time, they're always interesting, but they honestly follow the same pattern. It's basically bulk damage. The bosses have like sometimes a 10 hit, 4 hit damage move that they will target like a single character. So one character will be targeted and will be hit the next turn. So the burden is now on you to like avoid that damage somehow. While this is happening, like the boss is not alone. Like you have other enemies. It's basically another mission that you're playing, right? So you have to juggle those enemies and the boss at the same time. And I really like, sometimes I have to like go for a Hail Mary where I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to throw everything I have at this boss and just to try to ignore the damage coming from like the minions. I would say it works most of the time, and it especially works on the snake boss and the battleship boss. So those two bosses, like they have a ton of minions around them, but honestly just keep focusing the boss until like it dies out. On higher difficulties, the minions do hurt. So what you would usually do is sacrifice the attack of one member to try to take them out, and then going back to rushing down the boss. I would say that the worst boss out of the 4 is the jungle boss. It's like a robot that keeps jumping around. It's honestly the worst one just because of how tedious it is. It's not difficult, but the idea of just sparing turns just to get a chance to like hit him, it just takes a very long time and it's tedious. It is not fun to play against that guy. But the other bosses are really great. And I think the Morden boss is also very challenging, but it is the best one. Like I said all these things and I didn't mention the most important part. The most important feature in this game, the art. My goodness, like the pixel art in this game is unbeatable. If you see this game like for the first time, you think your eyes are like being tricked, like this is some AI generated content. Because it seems like you're playing Metal Slug, the original game, but it's now a turn-based strategy game. Like the layout and like the whole feel and vibe, it just feels right. The characters jumped out from the original franchise and just came to play this game instead. Like, you can tell they feel at home. When you go back to base, the characters just are lounging, some of them are having fun. So it is really nice. All in all, like, I really enjoyed this game and I did play it for a very long time. I think that this is the first time that Metal Slug went this far out of their comfort zone. But man, risk well taken. It's a really good product. More than anything, the developers did a good job because you can keep playing the game again and again and again. Just to reiterate, I finished the game 10 times. Not a single time did I have the same team or the same loadout. I always try to go with different loadouts, and every time it's a different game. Really a job well done. If you haven't picked up the game yet, my honest recommendation is to just do so. More so if you are a fan of strategy games, because this game is all strategy. Like, it doesn't have elements that take you outside of that. It's very focused on what it does best. Okay guys, thank you for listening to me ramble about a game for 25 minutes. Hope you had fun and have a nice day.